Right. So hello everyone, my name is Tanashka and I am a third year undergraduate in the Department of Industrial Engineering, currently studying in IIT Kharagpur. So thanks a lot everyone for joining in the event. Now, entrepreneurship has nowadays become a buzz. Like we see everyone coming up with their own startups in various fields, be it edtech, finance, healthcare, logistics, and many more. But there also exists another variant of the word that is social entrepreneurship. So, what does this social actually add to the world? So, that's what we're trying to explore today with the help of our panelist and our moderator. So we at GYWS aim to provide the youth with skills, resources and motivation so that they can achieve sustainable development goals and just give a little back to the society and do their part in developing this world and making it a better place. So through this discussion, we want to provide an insight to our audience and aspiring entrepreneurs like what it takes to start something like this, which affects a greater part of the society and a larger section of the audience. What are the risks involved, challenges faced, and how to overcome these obstacles? So, we have our panelists with us who have been working in this field, their personal journeys, lessons, and would be the driving influence and a great source of motivation for all the individuals who actually aspire to go down the same track, or if not, maybe would get inspired to do so. So, without wasting further time, let me introduce you to our panelists. Our first panelist is Mr. Shankar Maruvada sir. He's an alumnus of IIT KGP who further completed his MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. He's the CEO of Ek Step Foundation, a philanthropic mission he co-founded in 2015 along with two others to improve basic education for 200 million children in India. With more than 2 decades of experience across for-profit and not-for-profit and government sectors, he brings the best of thinking across the three sectors in shaping Ek Step's mission and its strategic choices of achieving population scale impact using technology, sustainability, and with speed. So, always passionate about addressing social problems at scale through technology based tools, he's an entrepreneur and marketing professional with a wide range of experience working on large scale projects such as Aadhaar, which was the India's national identification program. He's also an investor and mentor to various startups and entrepreneurs. Our second panelist is Mr. Santosh Parulekar, sir, an alumnus of SP Jain Institute of Management and Research. After completing his MBA, he went on to start his venture, People Tree Foundation, a social organization that works for the betterment of the rural poor. Now, we have seen many suicide cases of farmers in the last few years, and the basic reason is that they have quite a less income and are majorly overpowered by the middlemen. So People Tree was started to improve the income of these rural families by various means, by providing them with skill training, jobs, and employment to the members of the family. So they have trained more than around 1 lakh youth and provided them with jobs and livelihood and other opportunities. Our final panelist for the day is Mr. Babar Ali, also known as the young headmaster in the world, as honored by BBC when he was just 16 years old. His work for society and poor people dates back to when he was in fifth standard, merely of 9 years of age. He started a school in the backyard of his house. The school provides free education which helped the underprivileged to gain education. The school, which was started out of fun and game, has been recognized to increase the literacy rate of the area. And this selfless act helped to nearby poor people, earned him many awards. So he was recently featured in Forbes Asia in under 30 as the social entrepreneur. Now, we also had a fourth panelist, Ms. Smriti Nagpal, but she couldn't be able to join us due to some unavoidable circumstances. So now our discussion will be moderated by Professor Bhaskar Bhaumik, who also serves as a convener in Institute of Innovation Council at IIT Kharagpur and as a mentor in the area of innovation and entrepreneurship. He's an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad and IIM Calcutta and has been associated with GYWS as a member of its advisory committee and has always been there to guide us and support us whenever we needed him. So from here on, I hand over it to Professor Bhaskar Bhaumik to take the discussion ahead. And all the attendees are requested to post their questions only in the chat box and please be mute during the session. So to you.
Okay, thank you, Tanishka. Very well said. And I think today, within this trying time, this is the best platform that we can create and communicate with you, which is mostly required at this moment of time. The social entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship, as a whole, we are putting together a kind of a focus to it. Now, getting into the case studies or kind of theoretical discussions are not really expected in today's discussion. we are into more into the reality, and we have got very eminent panelists with us who would be telling you from their kind of day-to-day life, from their reality, the handling the situations and all that. That's what expected. And if I give you a little bit of introduction from my side, I would like to take you through three very small cases of myself. 2 years back, there was a consortium we created, because the idea of that consortium of different IITs, IIT Kharagpur, IIT Delhi, IIT Bombay, IIT Madras, put together, other NITs were there in the team. So we thought that we are doing a lot of the things in our labs, right? So how much that lab things are getting really transformed into the reality or goes to the field. So that's our challenge. So let us really connect to the people off the ground and who really requires kind of a technological and other helps as well, social economical helps. So we landed up we were in a launch. We landed up in Sundarbans. It is South 24 Parganas. It's somewhere near Sandeskari. I just forgot the exact name of that very small islands we had. And before that, we landed over there. We actually, IIT Delhi has already supplied, along with IIT Kharagpur, we made the fabrication finally. We already supplied some treadle pumps. Why the treadle pumps? Because if you land up there in Sundarbans, you will find that there are waters in the entire 360-degree direction. You will find waters, but there is no water for your drinking. There is no water for your cultivation, agriculture. So highly shortage of water. So we used to develop. I'm not getting into detail of the treadle pump and all that. I'm just telling you the story. So we had already supplied there. We installed. Our engineers went there. And our job was that opening with the larger community and talk to them how they are getting benefited. What we saw was very different on the job. That's why I think the eminent panelists would definitely be focused on that. That the treadle pumps were just lying idle. Nobody was using that. Some of them got some very bad shape in that. So what we at that point of time, we had 2 days only, and we cannot really stay back for long and take our decision. So what we really created a team of of that island, who are the youths who are literate like you. There are a lot of graduates there, postgraduates there from that islands. They do get the education from the other parts of the Bengal and this thing. So we motivated them. We created the team, and we told them that you are the leaders in this place. Basically, you take up the challenge and really carry out that what we wanted to do. This was 2 years back. Just a year back, that what happened with us, everybody, everything got shut down. And one of my friend from US, she told me that what we can do at this moment, everybody is sitting inside, we cannot go outside and this thing, can we do something? With this GOIWS, that's Gopali Youth Welfare Association, who are the organizer today, we had actually able to distribute 5,000 masks to the people who are to the lower strata, who could not even possible to buy the masks for them. We ended up supplying 2,000 packets of rations to the people for their 2 months. Okay, so something happened. We did it, and we actually, this GOIWS, all those members who are here are definitely gets the benefit out of that. Recently, from IIT Kharagpur, from our lab of innovation entrepreneurship lab from IIT Kharagpur, what we are connecting to the JNK, Jammu and Kashmir. And you know that in Jammu and Kashmir, there is a special grass called willow grass. From that, the same grass which is related to the willow bats and this thing. A lot of artisans are producing different artisan products from willow grass. But the entire process that we have seen is very much manual. It is not scalable. People are very struggling to really making day by day one piece kind of items there. So we had given their hand. That's an ongoing project that we have. Without getting into those details of the project, very interesting stories actually. So what I need to really understand that what actually entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship in particular, maybe it is the wisdom, it is the empathy, it is the willingness to do something, it is the passion. Those are the triggers for that. So we want to know from all of our panel members how you started, what is your real life stories, and how did you really interacted with the people, what happened, what was the challenges, all these things. So definitely will tell us much bigger stories. So what we'll do, we'll give you 10 minutes each, almost 10 minutes, not that kind of fixed this thing, kind of take 10 minutes each to tell your stories, give whatever information, and then we come back with some questions within ourselves and taking it from the other viewers from this panel. So that would be more kind of interacting and thing. I think that's the best way to go. So I would like to call upon at the youngest headmaster over here, Babar Ali, to come. And Babar, your frame is like this. Can you? So it is like horizontal. Is there any? Is it possible to really move that? It is not in the. It is actually you are the horizontally. Okay. Anyway, you can go forward, but yes, it is getting better. Getting better now. Now getting better. So slightly more. Have we lost the connection with Baba?
No, sir, he's still in the meet, just the camera is off.
Okay, fine. Answer.
Yes.
Yes, Baba, it's over to you. Just tell us those stories which are we are waiting to. Thanks a lot. Jai.
Okay, so thank you very much for this opportunity, and namaskar to all of you. I am from Murshidabad district, and perhaps you already came to know that Murshidabad is one of the poorest district across the country. It is one of the border district, Indo-Bangladesh border covers, and more than 80 lakh population is there. And the village where I still live is a remote one, far from the age of modernization. And more than 18 years back, the situation was odds. I noticed that some stray children wandered here and there like a sheep without the radar. So I made up my mind to do something positive for these helpless children. Actually, my father, though he is a school dropout, so he admitted me 10 kilometers far away school. And after returning from my school, I saw the children like my age. They are working in the fields, grazing cattle, or working at the houses, working collecting garbage as the rag pickers. So I collected 8 of them, include my sister, who was my first student, and started teaching in my family backyard. Though that time there was no particular syllabus, whatever I have learned from my own school, I used to share with those helpless children. Gradually, it became a school, and it was named Anando Shiksha Niketan, the home of joyful learning. So I had to suffer much, struggle much, but I did not give up hope. I hoped against hope and fought tooth and nail to combat all the adversities. So since my childhood, Swami Vivekananda's epoch-making doctrine, service to man is service to God, it inspires me to continue my mission. So when I founded my institution Anando Shiksha Niketan, the villagers were very skeptic to send their children, as because they were not educated themselves, and hence they used their children as the helping hand. To send the girls' children at our school, there was a strong reservation. So when I pursued to the parents to send their children at our school, the first question I was asked, how education will be important even who cannot afford 2 square meals a day. and to educate girls, they will not find husbands. Actually, the early marriage problem existed in our society. Still now, this problem is there. But I ignored all the criticism and went ahead with my plan. On the other hand, there was lots of ill-motivated, jealous people, lots of criticism, social problems, political problems, religious biasness, everything I have faced um, from my area. But nowadays at our institution, there is 60% are girls and 40% are boys. And not only that, over 18 years, I mean, right now I am 28 years old, and last 19th October 2020, we completed 18 years of our journey, and more than 6,000 students, they had received completely free education from our school. And not only that, out of them, 60% are girls and 40% are boys. And not only that, among them, 6 girls, they are our former students and former, I mean, first batch of our students. After their graduation and teachers training degree, they became the teacher at our institution. So as I believe that education is not a bookish knowledge, not a pack of information, but it is man making. So we are trying to help our student to become a real man who can positively impact our society. So nowadays we have a big dream. I mean, we want to establish a higher educational institution. But nowadays, what we are facing, most of the students, especially the boys students, after a age, they are leaving education and they are working as the migrant labor and across the country. So we want to establish a skill development institution at our institution. And during this pandemic situation, you know that over 1 year, especially our students, they are deprived from education because we have not that kind of resource, enough resource to give them online education, both from our students and from our institution also. Though we have the complete infrastructure and everything we have, but there is lots of communication gap between our students and and institutions. So we have a plan. One of my mentor, Mr. Mulli Reddy, he is also from IIT Kanpur. He is based on Mysore. He is also one of the Infosian. He worked in Infosys. So we have a plan to create a digital learners digital platform. So we are going to introduce this digital education at our across the country, basically for the economically deprived students. Because this pandemic, this is one of the greatest example of how these students are really deprived from this modern kind of education. And apart from all of these, you see, they are the first generation learner. So to bring them in the field of education and then to keep them in the field of education, this is very difficult for all of us. So we are trying our level best, and in some extent we are successful. And out of all of this, man-making education, this is the most important thing that I always believe. And you know that since my childhood, Swami Vivekananda, he is my role model, and from him I have learned so many things. His message, it also gives me strength, energy, and enterprise. And now I am convinced that nothing can stand against firm determination, firm conviction, and firm will. And the only things you should have into your heart are courage, purity, honesty, and above all, love. Actually, I heard the call of love in the core of my heart and proceed and ultimately succeed. I think we should have the motto, we must do something extraordinary in this whole human life. We must leave a mark on the soil in this earth. So the national ideals of India are renunciation and service. So these two lines should be embossed on the tablet of our mind. Mileage to go before I sleep, and mileage to go before I sleep. However, education for all with equal opportunity, this is my dream, but it is not only possible for me, but the peoples like you, like Gopali Youth Welfare Society, they are bringing a change. The bright students in our country, they are also trying to do something positive for our country. If we can do something extraordinary, something positive for the children who are still need education and also the quality education, then we can achieve this goal, education for all with equal opportunity. So lastly, go on bravely and do not expect success in a day or year. Always hold on to the highest, be steady, avoid jealousy and selfishness, be eternally faithful to the cause of truth, humanity, and your country, and you will move the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Babar. It was really inspiring. No, really, we got really inspired with the, we know that at least, we know how, because this particular
Bhaskar sir, you're on mute. Bhaskar sir, you are still on mute. I don't know why.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. So thank you, Babar Ali. It was really very much inspiring for all of us, because that GYWS also runs a school like the similar nature. Of course, there were some connection issues. A lot of IITians are really supporting that. I want to come with uh, Mr. Shantosh Parulekar, who has got a huge, experience. Babar is very young. He has got a passion. Philosophy of Vivek, but I think more organized way of looking into it from your experience of people, competitions, and the different activities. Please let's tighten the thing that ownership. Mr. Santosh Par.
Thank you, Professor. Can you hear me clearly? I mean, just to ensure that
You are audible. You are audible.
Okay. Let me first thank you for having this panel discussion, and I really appreciate what you discussed to start with. Because the problem which I visit various these institutes, and I attend many of these entrepreneurships sessions, and especially with most of these prestigious institutes, and I see these students, they have some rosy picture about social entrepreneurship. Okay. And means one way it is good, because more and more students from premier institutes are attracted to it. But at the same time, sometimes I always caution them that you should not be disappointed afterwards. So you should be realistic. Okay. Means first thing, entrepreneurship itself is something which is challenging, and social entrepreneurship is even more challenging. So I really appreciate what you said initially, that there are a lot of challenges when you get into the social entrepreneurship, and one has to have a long-term view when you get into it, and not some short-term feel-good factor or short-term benefits one has to look into. So let me just take you through our journey. So when we started it in 2007, and the intention is, as you know, even today, the agriculture income which the rural families get is less. And there are various factors that contribute to it, because the land holding is small, then agriculture is rent fed, and various other things. And I believe that many other organizations are trying to address that problem. However, we decided to focus on the other thing, is like how to augment that income, how to supplement it so that they can have some additional income to support their families. And that is when we realized that one way, because as you know that traditionally many of the agriculture people, they used to work during non-agriculture time. What I mean is non-harvesting time and other time. So they will go to cities, they will do some construction work or some any work, like I think what Babar was saying, like laborers, workers, or some people even, as you see, hawkers. So they go to cities, they earn some money, and then they come back during agriculture season. So we decided to get into that area, that okay, as it is, there is some unorganized way the people have been doing this. So why not to try to make it organized? And when we say organized, means first is that skill training, and that's what Babar was saying about vocational training. Yes, that's true. So first is the skill training, because you have to train them. And that too, we decided to focus main on construction, because traditionally rural people were comfortable working in construction, and construction is the second largest employer, so it needs huge number of workers. But the other problem is more challenging, because providing training is the easy thing. In construction, the other challenge is construction is not organized field. Okay, what I mean is that construction, it works on the petty contractors, so they don't offer you the job. So if there is one job, then you will get work for some time. Then afterward, again, you have to find another job. So to address that as well, the Provident Fund, ESIC, and all those things are not there. So to address that, then we decided to start our own staffing company. We started providing our trained students to the construction companies through our staffing agency, so that we can take care of their Provident Fund. We can take care of, I mean, just to give you an example, okay, our first batch, after we trained our first batch, I personally met the MD of a very large company, well-known company. I'm not naming it, but very well-known company. And they had a project which was happening in Ahmedabad River. They were doing reinforcement work, and then the MD was very kind to me, and he said, okay, we'll take your people, okay, on our site. And they decided to take those people on the site, and then my person went to Ahmedabad along with the team of, I think that was our first or second batch of 30 people, 30 students. He went to the site, and 9 o'clock in the morning, you won't believe, they reached at 6 o'clock in the morning, and 9 o'clock in the morning, I got a call from the yeah. Can you hear me? I think it went on mute. So he said, what type of people you have sent? I said, what is the problem? Uh, he said, you know, that your people, they came here today, and then they are asking that they are demanding that they want toilets. Okay. I was surprised. I said, what do you mean? He said, see, you know, on this project, I have 700 workers working, and all of them are using the natural way, and we don't have any toilets on the construction site, and you are only for 30 people. Do you expect me to provide toilets? So that's the time when I realized and then obviously we decided to immediately, he did not accept them, so we moved them to other site. Fortunately, we had other projects where they had all the facility, but we started facing this type of problem. Like, suppose if there is means that, giving another example, in Chennai, I sent 30 people in Chennai, and within 2 days they came back, and you know, the reason was that there was no good drinking water, and the drinking water and toilet water, okay, they were using the same water, and our people who came from the villages, means, as you know, whether it is West Bengal, UP, BR, then villages, they get good drinking water, clean drinking water, and then they refuse to work there. So then we realized that we cannot control that, so it's better that we provide all those facilities ourselves, because the construction companies refuse to provide them, and they refuse to provide it.
Santosh sir, you went on mute. I'm so sorry. Hello, Santosh sir. You're on mute. Just a minute. So you'll have to unmute it.
Mr. Santosh, please unmute and tell. And within the talk, please do not change the setup of the entire thing.
Yes, sir.
Please carry on, Mr. Santosh. Mr. Santosh is in connection. Tanishka.
I guess he
No,
left
sir, I
and
guess
will be
he.
joining.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, he's back. Please, sir, unmute yourself.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, please carry on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, please.
I don't know.
Sorry for the inconvenience.
Something is wrong.
Yes, technologies are like, please carry on.
So sorry. So coming back to point, then we realized that unless we have control on some of those things, because they cost some money, but I think we wanted to provide them, and that's when we started our staffing company. So now we provide our students in construction mainly. We provide them to our staffing. And as we went on, then there were more challenges came in, and that's why I want all the students to be aware that the challenges is part of the life, and they will keep on coming. And more challenges started coming because for some road construction companies we have been providing, and today also we provide students as a pure staffing company. But for building construction companies, the challenge which we faced is the company started saying that, okay, if you say that I have trained a person and so he's better than your workers, okay, who are untrained, so then you prove it. Okay. I said, what do you mean? He said that, okay, that if you are saying that he can produce more, then you ensure that he produces more. I asked them question that when you offer a job to a civil engineer from even from IIT, that time you don't demand that he has to produce this much, right? Even when you hire a MBA graduate, that time also you don't demand, but you are demanding it from a worker, okay, whose salary is probably 10,000, and while you are not demanding it from the management graduate who you are offering 3 lakhs rupees. But they insisted, and that is when we even decided to even provide the contracting service in building construction. So today, like for example, what I mean by contracting means our student deliver the results and they pay us based on the square feet basis, and we ensure that our students deliver as per our expectation. So while doing all that, we faced another problem that we were not able to attract women or girls. Okay, because construction, the women don't find it much safe, and the other thing is that women want jobs close to their houses. That's when we did a project in Sonabhadra. Sonabhadra is next to UP, and we provided training to large number of women, and we provided them jobs on the nearby site. Okay, we were fortunate enough to get a nearby site of the godown construction, and it was a great success because we could provide them jobs near their house, and they were very much excited. Unfortunately, after that Nirbhaya incident happened, and majority of the construction companies refused to take women on the site. Okay, and we could not continue with the replication of that project on the other sites. However, one thing we realized that we have to do something for women because we saw that they are women and girls, because we saw them more sincere, more loyal, and really willing to do few things, many things. And that is when we got into the other area. Now we provide training in the retail as well as healthcare for women and girls, and we provide them jobs near their house so that they can take care of their families also. Having said that, with all that, still we were not able to address the need of the woman, means which I'm saying the agriculture married woman who has to take care of field, who has to take care of family, and still, if possible, she wants to earn some money. And that is when we came out with the initiative in AgriAllied, means as you know in Birbhum in West Bengal, we are doing it in Telangana also, but with Birbhum in West Bengal, we are doing a large project where we are providing training in honeybee hives, so honey production. We are providing them the free hives, and not only that, the honey which is produced, we are selling it locally as well as in the retail market in Mumbai and other cities. Okay, so we have created a brand so that they can get a good market, good price, because what we saw is that in the local market, the honey was being bought at the rate of 100 rupees, 80 rupees per kg. And as we now started buying honey from our beneficiaries, now even the other wholesalers are buying it for 250, 350, 450, 400 rupees. Okay, the same honey, which they were buying for 90 rupees, now they are willing to buy it for 300, 400 rupees. That is only because we ourselves are asking for 10 tons of honey each year, and that will go up. So and so their economics is now disturbed, but we are able to sell it as a gift item in Mumbai and other cities, and that's the way we are giving them the livelihood. In addition to that, we are doing even the neem oil and neem cake production there, which is sold as the organic manure, and that is majorly sold in local market. But however, we are even selling in retail as the beauty product. Having said that, our intention is mainly to help rural families earn at least 50-60,000 rupees per annum additional income other than the agriculture. And in doing that, there are failures, there are mistakes we make, and there is learning. And I'm sure that we'll continue to make mistakes, we'll continue to learn things, and we will continue to correct and come out with the new models. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Santosh. It was really good to know where we saw kind of, in case of Babar's case, he's taking up the kids and making them, some kind of education. But I was about to ask Babar that what then what actually. You have given us the answer that then what is that you can really make them, upskill them to make them work in a particular organized, industries as well. And not only that, with that kind of a production, you are taking it to the market. So starting from the, students should understand, starting from the idea of social entrepreneurship, we have now reached to the entrepreneurship per se, where we are talking about the pricing, where we are talking about the positioning, all this, big stuffs like that, very well to know. Here I want to bring actually Mr. Shankar, because he's from my alma mater. I'm Ahmedabad. Nice having you over in this panel. And Shankar has not only seen more closely in terms of technology-driven education systems building up, but also I think in terms of to see a larger picture on this. So in terms of its impact and how things are happening, what is to be done in future, how should we go forward? All these questions are actually at this moment on the panel. So Shankar, would you please like to come?
Thank you, Professor Bhaskar. And listening to Babar and Santosh was really inspiring. Their vision, their belief, their passion. That's the kind of stuff that differentiates social enterprise from anything in the for-profit sector. There's a certain larger calling. So unfortunately, in my case, the larger calling was not, did not hit me, if at all, till very late. 9024107. That was my roll number while I was at IIT Kharagpur and from RP Hall. And the only idea of social service was NCC, and the only idea of Gopali was a village one crossed on the way to the Salua firing range of NCC. And there in the 90s, one was busy thinking about the rat race. After IIT, one went on to IIM Ahmedabad to be a bigger rat in a smaller rat race. And after IIM Ahmedabad, one joined the multinational to start the rat race. So after a few years of the rat race, again, serendipity, chance, the environment, whatever, there was a dot-com buzz that was happening all around. And one fine day, I quit my job to start my entrepreneurial journey. There was nothing social about it. It was just about making money and making a big impact. So that journey went on for a few years. And I think by 2008, after a few entrepreneurial failures, finally we hit it, succeeded, and sold off our company for a large amount. And there I was in my mid-30s, having achieved everything I dreamt of while I was 9024107, right? And there's still a big life ahead. So anyway, one enjoyed life for a year, and then I again serendipitously bumped into Nandan Nilekani, who asked me while he was still at Infosys, and this is before UID, what are you doing? What are you doing these days? So I'm just enjoying life. I've achieved everything I wanted to. So I said, no, you're too young for all of this. So meet me in a month. I have an exciting social project for you. So I thought, yeah, sure, why not? If one can help somebody, why not? But a few weeks later, I was enjoying my coffee when I heard the CNBC news that Nandan Nilekani has quit Infosys to join UIDAI at the request of the Prime Minister. I remember telling my wife that I don't think this is going to end up well for me. So that was 2009, and now 2021. It hasn't ended well for me. I'm still doing the same thing. But that was how I got into UIDAI as part of the initial startup team. And among other things, my job was to convince 1 billion Indians to willingly go to a biometric center, give their fingerprint, and get the UIDAI number. And it was, again, my honor and privilege to be given the responsibility of naming it. And that's how we all have an Aadhaar number. And so from 9024107 to a 12-digit Aadhaar number, it was quite a 2-decadal journey. But that journey lasted a few years, 2009 to 2013. And there also, it was a few of us in the beginning, both government and non-government. And it was my first experience of the development sector, first experience of being part of government. And that's how we realized the largest social enterprise in the country is the government of India. Right? And it's a very, very complex undertaking. But even then, what we realized is, as part of enterprise, we used to call ourselves as garage.gov.in, a large entrepreneurial venture by a small number of people within government. So there itself, Nandan used to say, if you're going to spend 5 years doing this, might as well dream big. Because whether you dream big or you dream small, the effort you put is the same. So that's how we came up with few simple goals, which I again carry over from the business world, right? That in the first 5 years, we will reach 600 million people. And that would form the basis for reaching 1 billion people in 10 years, right? And they'll set a bunch of goals without having too much of a clue of how we'll do it. But that's the first important thing, that you have to set a goal that not only inspires you in a social context, because inspiring yourself is good, but can it inspire people around you? Right? Because the more number of people you inspire around you, the more number of people who are willing to work towards that vision, the more number of resources you can tap into. It is at 60 million, it's a problem of 6% of India. But at 600 million, it's a problem of half of India. And at 1 billion, it's a problem of entire India. So again, it was quite an eventful journey. It'll take many hours to talk about it, but it was a fabulous learning. And we had come from the private sector. There were wonderful officers from the government sector, two completely different worlds, the world of for-profit and the world of development sector. The kind of debates, passionate disagreements and arguments we used to have in the first 1 year taught us some very valuable lessons. That when you are setting a very inspiring vision, that inspiring vision should be so high that what unites people should be much more than what differentiates them. So in spite of the differences, because of the larger vision and goals, we work together. And the end result is what you see of it now. And of course, there are many other dimensions to it of being such a large and complex project. But that was a part of the life, right? Again, as I said, I thought I'd achieve all my dreams by 2008, but by 2014, I realized that what happened in those 4 years was nothing compared to before. Now, the problem is when you work on a project at the scale of Aadhaar, it's like a tiger has tasted blood. You cannot work on small projects anymore. So in 2015, Nandan Nilekani, his wife Rohini, and I co-founded EkStep Foundation after we all exited from Aadhaar. EkStep Foundation is focused on education, primary education. But there again, is on the same principles. We set very high unachievable goals that we will reach 200 million by 2020 as the first step. That's 5 years, 200 million. Oh, we have 250 million students, So 80% of that seemed fair enough for a private sector philanthropic organization. Now, the problem with a goal like that is you absolutely have no way of you don't know how to even achieve it. So any logical thing that you can think of, whether IIT mind or not, fails. And that thinking, that forces you to think out of the box. And that's when you reach out to everybody around you to see who all can help you. Because at 200 million, again, it is not your problem, right? And you'll be surprised by how many people will rally around that, saying that that problem is my problem also. So I also want to be a part of that thing. And we set a few other very, very specific goals that whatever we are, we as an organization will not become big. We started off with 20 people, right? And we are now 40 people, and that's it, right? But our idea and our impact should grow. And so it's not our solution. It is not our problem. How you define it forces you to work with others, forces you to create solutions that work on the ground. Again, a whole lot of mistakes there. And Santosh's point of you need to be persistent. There is absolutely nothing glamorous about social enterprise. If anyone tells you it's glamorous, they're not in social enterprise, right? And it looks glamorous from the outside, and it is glamorous till you are in it. Then you realize it is hard work. But it's true of any profession, right? Even acting, the most glamorous of professions, is hard work once you get in there. But the problem is once you get into social enterprise, everything else seems very boring. It is business and a for-profit world is very simple. You just have to maximize profit, share, revenue, a few non-variables. But in social enterprise, it's so complex. There's so many stakeholders, so many interconnected parts, right? That normal formulas fail. It's the equivalent of Newtonian mechanics completely fails in the realm of the quantum, right? But it doesn't mean you cannot use some principles, but the formula fail. Right? And that is how it is in the world of social enterprise. So I don't know how many of you know the word enterprise comes from French, and it was initially used for the soldiers and adventurers who would go out on a venture, right? So that venture was an enterprise, and anybody who did that was an entrepreneur. It was only in 1800s that it got connected in the way that we know, right? So I just want to close out by saying that one, you don't have to be, there are extreme cases like Babar from a childhood, they know what they have to do, right? Then there are extreme cases like me, been there, done it, made all the money, and and then you just meet someone and things happen. It can be somewhere in between. The other is you can save one farmer, like Santosh's organization. You can make the life of one child, like Babar, right? Or you can solve for a billion. It does not matter. Both are extremes of social enterprise. You can make money out of social enterprise by charging, or you can choose to do it free. That's also fine. But the critical question in a social enterprise is, as your enterprise gets bigger, does the value accrue more to society or to you and your organization? If the answer is as your organization becomes bigger, the value is coming more to you and your organization. Your organization is becoming more valuable. You are becoming more famous, right? Versus impact on the ground. No matter what it is, whether it is not for profit, it is not social enterprise. On the other hand, even if you're a for-profit, as you're becoming bigger, if the value is going more to society, that is social enterprise. So I'll stop here, Professor, and hand it back to you.
That was great. That was great in a sense of complete and a kind of an introductory definition that we can give it to our student, that what you have mentioned in terms of the value, that how you create that value, and you not only keep that value with you, you are actually distributing not in the sense of profit making, you're distributing to in the real sense and making the entire community bigger, entire nation bigger. Having said that, I want to come back to at least one follow-up question from my side, and then we'll get back to the common questions that we get from the viewers. What an interesting statistics that Babar has given to us. This is open to this thing, that 60% girls and 40% boys now as his organization grows in. And the similar thing that has been reflected by Santosh saying that those are the women who actually are the better worker in terms of they really want to work and this thing. What I mean to say is that I want to go back to that Babar's idea of picking up Swami Vivekananda, who says that within one wing you cannot really fly, so you have to have the both wing together. So we are actually looking into that part of women social entrepreneurship part of it. How do you like to feel that that thing can be blossomed in our country? And we really, from your stories itself, we have seen that there are lots of resources in our country, lots of resources. You only need a mind like Shankar or Santosh or Babar, who could really put themselves in and try to make an enlargement of that whole resource and make something out of that. So I would want to get back to Babar by itself. That Babar, how do you feel like that those girls are joining back to your school? Do you have any specific idea about women entrepreneurship, women leadership, so and so forth, and what is going on the ground?
So this is really an important question. So you see, basically, these students. So when I started my institution, it was very difficult to bring them in the field of education because there was religious biasness, strong reservation, early marriage problem. And from their family, both girls and boys students, they have the similar problems. For girls, there was a strong reservation, and for boys, they use them as the helping hand for their family members. But what happened when I pursued to the parents and showed my example that you see my parents, they are also the school dropout. They are also sending me in school. My sister, she is also studying now. Why your children, why they should not come at our institution? Because there is the importance of education. Because if a girl child, if she can get education, she can educate more children in our society. So this is one of the important things. And gradually what happened, many people, they got motivated. Gradually it was increased, more girls, gradually it was increased. And by the way, for the boys students, after a age, they used to leave their education and they engage themselves in different kinds of works. Basically the migrant laborers in different parts in our country. And of course, this is one of the remarkable things from our area nowadays, that most of the girls students, they are coming back and they are also encourage others. They are also inspiring others to get education, to involve in the education sectors. And in our institution also, 90% is teaching staff. They are all qualified teachers. They are all of our former students as per the NCET norms. So there 90% is our girls, and in our managing committee, all the established persons from our society, most of the women, they are helping us. So basically what happens, it helps to bring the social change and reforms of education in our society. So and of course, you see that girls are often we used to say that girls are neglected. They are not engaged themselves in education sector. So this is one of the example, and it did not happen in one day. So it is the continuous process. When 10 girls students came in our institution, and then more 20 girls students, they became motivated. So it is one of the step-by-step process and continuous process. And now that's why we are getting good result, because that was one of the obstacles that we have faced to bring the girls children. Now we have the success point that most of the students are girls at our institution.
And Babar, you can see that the entire benefit really directly goes to the family. When you educate a girl child and she becomes the kind of literate girl, literate person in the society, it goes directly, the benefit directly goes to the family. While as you were saying that meals are going out, they have got to do something else, and so and so. So I think there is a very good signal that at least from your part of world
Yes,
we
yes.
can see. Yes,
Yes,
definitely.
so of course they are getting good benefit, but on the other hand, nowadays there is we should give concentrate on boys' education also. Here
Absolutely. That is
in our
absolutely.
district, what happened? If 1 lakh students are appearing for 10th standard examination, so among them 65% is are girls. So there is the huge gap. So
There is
what
a
happened?
right.
That most of the boys students, they engage themselves in mostly in construction sector, that Santosh P said he
Right,
already
right,
mentioned.
right.
So
That's what
we
I
need to
was trying to.
concentrate on it. So if we can give balance, of course we will give importance on girls education, but we
Sure,
need to
sure,
give
sure,
balance
sure.
now. Yes, sir.
Santosh, please, would you
Okay,
like
yeah.
to? Yes.
I I want to now I'm on. You can hear me, right? Just to start with. Okay. See, I just want to pick up on one point which you raised, which is very valid and which Babar indirectly said, is means rather I would say that when you said that a woman is working, and that is our experience. Okay. When the man is working, and now I am talking about only married men or slightly younger age men, but all the men. What we have seen is that in the blue collar workers, when they start earning, majority of their earnings still they want to spend it on themselves, or they want to splurge it, right? Like for example, the boy who comes from Bihar or Jharkhand, after his first or second salary, we have seen that he will be buying a very good smartphone, okay, which is what his aspiration is. While what we have seen with women is that the majority of this money will be used for their families, for their children, for their food, or whatever the other, for their families, for their house. And that is what differentiates training and providing employment or livelihood to women, and that is why we spend a lot of time doing that. So I think what you picked up is a very valid point. Now to now to add to what Babar has said, one thing what I want to say is that in social enterprise, we have to be listening to what our beneficiaries are saying, and that has to be the continuous feedback system. Means I will elaborate what I mean. Okay, means first thing is that as I was very much means I would say uh, confident or very much pushing my people, saying that we have to provide employment to women in construction. And we tried various models, okay, trying to send wife along with husband, training them and all. But eventually, we realized that we are not listening to them. They are saying, I want job near homes. Married women, they were saying that I want job near home so that I can each day evening I can come home. Okay, I can take care of my families. And that is what we saw, that it was greatly successful in Sonobhadra when we are providing them the transportation to reach the construction site, we are providing them transportation to come back, and it was a great success, even though we could not replicate it. Okay, and but that was a good model which we were confident. And from learning from that, then we went on to provide training and employment to girls and women nearby areas so that they can come back home in the evening. And then we thought that is what is the best thing. However, when we were training and providing employment to girls in Amravati, and I was surprised that many of these girls, they opted to go away. They were not asking for jobs in Amravati or Akola, but they wanted jobs in Nagpur, or many girls came to Pune. And that is when we realized, and they said, no, I want to move away from family because there are a lot of constraints in the family and I want to move away. And that is what then we learned. And many girls who are working in Pune, they are working for last 3 years. Okay, so the dropout rate is very low in that. So we have to really, and then now you look at it from the healthcare, right? So we saw that we are providing large number of girls who are providing training in healthcare and providing them the jobs. And that is when we see that we are providing locally as well as we are providing jobs away, and we see that there are different clientele based on their interest they pick up. So we cannot just sitting here say that this works, this doesn't work. We have to keep on exploring the option. The last point which I would say is that, and this I am talking about the women entrepreneurships, as you were saying, right? So women doing their own businesses. What I have seen is sometimes we come out with a model and where we expect them to do everything, and that I believe is slightly injustice to them. You know, that someone coming from that background who has not never done a business, we expect them to do a business. We expect them to be the expert in selling, packaging, and all. It's injustice. I believe that first we have to allow them to do what they are comfortable with, and we have to take care of other things. Hand holding has to happen, and slowly they will pick up. Okay, means I will tell you, in selling honey, we said you don't have to worry about selling honey. Okay, you just learn, you just extract honey, and we'll take care of marketing. And you know what, that gave them a lot of confidence. And first initial 1 season or 2 season, we sold all the honey. Now you won't believe, this season more than 80% of honey they sold in the local market themselves. In fact, we found it difficult to get honey in Mumbai. I wanted 2 tons of honey, and I found it difficult to get 2 tons because they could sell it at such a good price that we did not want to stop them. So they will learn, and they will slowly learn, and then the opportunities will come to them. But we cannot insist on them doing from the day one. We have to do hand holding. We have to give them some time. That's what I would say.
Right. With that, I want to come with to Shankar, that still in the context of social entrepreneurship, the discussion of women empowerment as a whole, that's what, including entrepreneurship, including job, including learning put together, teaching, and all that. It still like an unachievable goal, as you were mentioning. It's a huge task in that matter. It's not achievableness, it's a huge task. Should we, you are an experienced person, how should we look into it? Looking into the smaller opportunities, or doing big together, or how should we go about it?
Yeah, it's a fascinating discussion with listening keenly to what Babar and Santosh said. And as I was reflecting on the discussion, 2 things that came to my mind. Going back to the earlier thing about value. Very often, one of the dangers in a social enterprise is because we are doing it for others' good, we think we know what others want. So the value we think they should have is the value that we think they should derive. Like an example, as Santosh was saying, that the value of his proposition for a young girl is different from that maybe for a married girl. Right? For a young girl who wants to get away, forcing her to stay near the house is not value. Right? So the larger caution there, and I'll come to the second point, is we should always watch out. And Santosh very eloquently talked about it in terms of listening to beneficiaries. We should watch out for ego coming in, right? Because I'm doing it for your good, I know what is best for you. Right? And because I know what is best for you, here is my solution. You have to just apply it. What else can I do for you? Right? Now, the same thing with women. What do women want? Right? And therefore, see, I saw the topic of the thing that is saying that changing society is very hard. Right? It is hard. But I'll tell you what is harder than that: changing yourself. Right? It's easy for us to tell others to change. But when the change comes on us, it is very, very difficult. What's my point here? When we're telling that women have to go from a certain, let's say, to use chemistry, s orbital to p orbital, right? It has to be at their pace, at their comfort, with their agency. So therefore, while we might have a destination, that inspiring destination, we must also think of what I call as a series of plus ones, where each step is doable and yet transformative. And once I take that step, I cannot go back to my earlier world. In fact, what Santosh talked about is also that. He made sure that you produce honey, we'll take care of everything. Once they produced honey, once they got used to it, then they will take the next step. They might also find buyers. But if Santosh has said, I will do everything, you get the honey, you buy, you market it, you sell it, it might be plus 10, too far. But if we can think of the destination and be flexible in the outcomes, because that is the power of cooperation, collaboration, listening to everybody. My solution may not be the best. In fact, my idea might also be wrong. And the humility to say that it's the destination that matters, not my path. And it is okay if the outcome is not the destination. A small +1 step, then the next +1 step, right? That's why we called ourselves Ek Step, because a journey of 1,000 miles always begins with one step, right? But it's 1,000 of those steps that will reach you to the, your destination. So not getting paralyzed by, oh, it's such a big problem, right? But how can you break it down into what is an easy, doable thing? These problems have not arisen overnight. The problem of women's suppression has not risen overnight. It's taken thousands of years. It's not just a social problem. It's an economic problem, political problem, religious problem, right? A community problem. And that is the nature of social problems. They're so complex, right? Unlike what you're taught in engineering, there is no elegant solution, right? In many cases, even the problem is not elegant. You don't even know what the problem is. Oftentimes, what you think you're solving is not the problem, but the symptom of the problem, right? But therein lies the possibility. The more time you spend with the problem, the more you talk to people, you might find the equivalent of the butterfly flapping its wings in China, which causes a storm in America. One small thing that you can do, right? And it's, like for example, hygiene, right? Toilets. We made a lot of progress in the last 100 years. But what finally mattered was with one push of a button, you can flush. One push, right? It finally came down to, by enabling things where one action of one individual, one push solves their problem, that's when it revolutionized, right? So going back to Santosh's thing, even women's entrepreneurship, right? Who benefits when women become entrepreneurs? It's not just women becoming entrepreneurs, right? And everyone who benefits, can we rally them around the cause? Because then it's not your battle alone. It's a battle of everyone. And that everyone could be governments, it could be the private sector, it could be community, it could even be international agencies, it could be media, right? If media loves women's empowerment stories, they're also allies, right? So thinking about the problem differently, whether it be women's empowerment through entrepreneurship or education or social justice in anything, the principles, as I've found it, remain the same. There is a destination, but break it down into achievable outcomes, be flexible on the path. Sometimes to go north, the best option might be to go south, because in front of you is an impenetrable jungle. It's okay. Go south, then turn around and then bypass that, right? And that is also the joy of entrepreneurship. You sometimes come up with unexpected allies, unexpected paths, right? And my advice to everybody is be comfortable in this lack of clarity, because that is the nature of life.
Great, Shankar. I think you have really summarized that the learning for this at least today's kind of panel discussion. I just want to say one line before I leave it to the questions from the audience, is that yes, the students who are here, I believe that they want to change the society, the community, the world, the nation together. But as Shankar, Santosh, and Babar said, can you start with changing yourself? So that is the starting point. That is the next step that we can really take from today's discussion. So I would like to open this forum for the questions which you have collected. You can communicate to the speakers and the panelists, please.
Okay, so the audience has joined. Do they have any questions that you can put up? Or we have a list of questions as well, sir. I'll be asking one of them.
Yes, please carry.
Okay, so sir, the one major question is that how social a social entrepreneur should be. Like, there are always two aspects. Entrepreneurs always focus on the profit, and social part is focusing on the doing good for the society. So how to make a balance between those? Like, where to break that bar and choose key. Now you have to go for profit in this field and not in that field.
Should I take it?
Please,
But
please carry.
I would just say one thing. If you heard Shankar carefully, in his first dialogue itself, he has made it very clear. He said that if in a social entrepreneurship, if the social benefit is majorly going to the society, then you are really more social. Then the benefit is really coming to organization or yourself, then certainly it's not as social as you think. Means that's the sentence which I believe is the very I would say very well said, and I would certainly remember it for even for my life. And I would like all these aspiring social entrepreneurs to remember that, because you know what, that's the dilemma which all of you will have all the time. Means just to give you example, like when we did the women training and employment in Sonobhadra, for that project we spent money, we lost, rather you say in the business terms, more than 1 crore of the money in that overall project. But we are very much convinced that this model, we have to do the pilot, we have to spend that money, and we will put whatever it takes to make it successful. And it was a great success. If you look at it from the social benefit, okay, it created huge benefit to the families during that time. So it's your call. There is no thumb rule to say that. But obviously, having said that, in the organization, eventually you have to survive. You have to make sure that you are there in the business for the long term, because you cannot just go bankrupt only doing social work. So you have to work on various source of funding. You have to make sure that you have the sufficient cash flow to take care of the cash flow. But at the same time, if you internally feel that okay, this is going to give the social benefit, then you should go for it. That's what I would say.
I think Shankar can come in.
Sure. Yeah, my simple analogy is of fuel in the fuel tank of a car, right? The profit, funding, revenue that you charge should go into the fuel tank, right? If it's going into your water bottle in the car, it's certainly not a good idea, because if you're planning to sip that fuel, right, it's not a good idea. But if you don't have fuel in the tank, and that is the money, you're not going to get very far, right? So is the liquid coming into the car going as fuel into the tank, or as a beer for the driver? Very simple, right? Both are some variation of carbon compounds, right? But are you feeding the car or are you feeding yourself? Now, again, it does not mean that you should not feed yourself in the sense that you must have a comfortable life, right? Because if you're not alive, doesn't matter how much fuel is there in the car, it's not going anywhere, right? So rather than give 60% profit, it's too complex a scenario. If you're charging money, if you are getting funding, if you're earning a profit, it's okay, right? You have to survive the journey. The car has to have energy to complete the journey. If these two happen, then whatever is good. Because, for example, Ekstep is blessed to be funded entirely by the Nilekani philanthropy, right? Therefore, we have chosen not to charge anything for anything that we do. But if we did not have it, we would have to charge for services because we have to pay people, right? So that I would just leave it at that high level. And this is not the socialistic era where people will wear khadi and suffer because the youngsters want to have a decent life, right? It is not the Gandhian era where I'm suffering, watch me suffer, so I'm a hero, right? Nobody is a martyr these days. People should have a comfortable life, because if you are unhappy with your personal life, it will reflect in your work, right? You cannot say that, yeah, at home, I have to listen to my, I have to see my children go hungry. you will not be inspired, right? So you have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of your people in the organization who are doing the work. For that, you need fuel in the tank. For that, whatever works.
There's a common question before the students come in. Common question I see around the discussion is that about the funding availability. When you start a social entrepreneurship, do you really have an availability of funding? If you are an woman entrepreneur or a social entrepreneur, if you are a farmer, okay. So what are the availability of funding, sources of finances where you can really go and start this thing? Can you put on some light, Shankar and Santosh Guru?
I think Santosh, you might be better equipped to answer this particular question.
Yes, please.
That's the most difficult question to answer, rather, because you know what, as you know that as an entrepreneur itself, finding a good venture capital fund, okay, who is convinced on your whatever your goals are, and as well as willing to put in the funds is difficult, because you know there is a lot of competition, and in social enterprise it's even more difficult. Okay. Finding the investor, okay, who are convinced about your social goal is very difficult, because what I have seen, and I'm being very blunt, okay, that might not be everyone's experience, but what I have seen is that majority of the venture capitalists, they are interested in multiplying their money. Okay. And there are few funds who are interested in the social ventures, but still finally they are running the funds, so they would certainly be interested in the returns, and that's what their interest would be. So what I have seen is that the better investors are the investors who find it as a strategic interest. Like for example, for us, the construction companies when we started, or like what we went for IDFC, which were funding the construction companies, those were the right pool of investors for us. But in addition to that, I would say if you are doing a social enterprise, then you should not only go for the venture capital or the equity. You should explore all options. Like as Shankar was saying, like working with government from the funding, so that you can get some funding, sponsorship as well. Going for donations, so that if you have the donors, then that also will supplement your income, and additional revenue from your model. So in social enterprise, you should explore all the options. I will tell you very frankly, okay, in the initial days, for first few years, we were not accepting donations. Means I refused to accept donation. And one of my friend, he came and he said, no, Santosh, I want to give you money. Why don't you take it? Okay, and that's when he's from Singapore and he's from BR, and that is when I started in BR, because that time I did not have funds. But he said, I'm just giving you, and I'm not even asking you anything. I know you will use it properly, so why don't you take it? And that's when we started foundation to accept donation. And what I would advise to all of you is that do not refuse any funds, or do not even think I'm not going to touch government, because initially I was against working with government. Okay, means classic corporation, we come from the professional background and we don't want to work with government because we don't like all the many practices which we feel are bad. But I have seen over years working with government, we learn many things. As Shankar said, that their processes are very good. The documentation which I learned from government is the fantastic, because we started doing very good documentation, MIS. Okay, so many things you learn, and in everything, all your interactions. So please keep it open from your funding, accept donations, accept equity, accept debt, work with government, work with private, and as well accept money from the beneficiaries if they want, they are willing to pay.
So I have a slight, orthogonal, since it's an important question of care, not with respect to farmers, but a general set of principles I would advise is: one, find out who cares about solving the problem. In this case, farmers. Governments care. A lot of corporates like ITC care, right? And there are a lot of philanthropists who care. Now, the second is, among those who care, who's putting money in it, right? That's the second thing. The third is, why do you need money? Okay, suppose you need money to pay farmers, right? Can someone pay the farmers directly instead of it coming via you? Next, can you think of your business model where you break it up into various parts and figure out which of those parts are cash intensive, right? and then you figure it out such that others can do the cash intensive part, talk to them, saying that, look, in my business plan, there's a 30% element where the farmer has to be compensated for selling his crop below this or for organic, right? Can you directly give the farmer? So otherwise, it's the lazy way out. I have an idea. I'm doing the world good. Someone give me money. This is this is life, right? Unfortunately, you don't get money when you want it. It's when you don't want it that lots of people run after you with money. So be innovative, break up the problem, right? And see where is money needed for what. And keep your fund requirement very good. So for example, if you need to hire people, go to colleges, create an internship, because everybody loves an internship which helps them get a job. Get 4 people from the nearby college who will become your researchers or whatever, right? Be very, very clever in how you get resources. Be very, very clever in how you use funds, and you'll come up with many ideas.
Great. Tanishka, over to you.
Hello, am I audible?
Please carry on. Great.
Yeah, so I had a question regarding, as you mentioned that being a social entrepreneur, you should always be flexible with what kind of solution you are trying to make. And you should always take feedback from the actual stakeholders, that whether or not they are getting the benefits which you are trying to provide them with. So this is a general problem which I have also seen while working with GYWS in past 5 years, that setting up a continuous feedback channel with our stakeholders or our beneficiaries is very difficult as a student body for us. For example, we have conducted surveys and we have floated Google Forms, and our practices are majorly restricted to these activities. As you people have scaled your solutions a little bit more than us, I would like to know about different kind of channels through which we can actually get this continuous feedback from our beneficiaries or our stakeholders, so that we can always be flexible about our solution and make it more targeted towards the segment which we are we want to benefit to.
Yeah, so some of it, Prerit, right? Some of it is a function of, it's not about continuous data, continuous feedback mechanisms. As you listen, you get better at listening, right? And you start asking the smarter questions. So for example, you don't go to a beneficiary and say, what do you want, right? You go to a beneficiary and find out what they are using and ask them why using this, because what they want and what they use are 2 completely different things, right? And when you see them in their lives, what they're using, right? And then you ask them, what would make you use this product of mine, right? They will tell you something, but it's not what they tell you, it's what you interpret. So I'll give you an example. At Xstep, we created some fabulous edtech, personalized learning technologies, learning games, and all the stuff. The best of the engineers in the world created it. We went and showed it to housewives, and they watched their children play with it. And we said, what do you think? This lady said very shyly, sir, it is great. It's very engaging. My child is engaged. But, this is like the pickle with the meal, right? This is like the pickle with the bhat. It is good in a while, but it is not the thing. So we asked, what is the bhat then? Is that the main meal is a textbook, right? Then we realized that everything we're doing is all wrong. We were trying to bypass the textbook and make learning engaging. What she's saying is, if you do that, you're just feeding my child pickle, right? However, and that led us to the idea of connecting the textbook to the content, digital content, right? And that is the idea, which is how in India now, if you pick up most state level textbooks, the textbooks have QR codes with unique number, right? That is solving the problem of the achar connected to the bhat. So it's right. It's a practice like with anything, but you're in a social enterprise. Since it's difficult to measure value, the true measure of a value is, are people using your solution? Are they using it sustainably? Are they using it continuously? If so, you know you have cracked it. Otherwise, you're continuously refining it.
Absolutely, I can support Shankar as the story credit I have given you in the beginning itself. So what we learned from Sundarbans is that we try to give lot of technological solutions to those community, but we end up with the questions like how we can make better our agriculture system. What is the way out that we can sell our agricultural outputs to the market. So those are the questions becomes more prominent than what we wanted to tell them, right? So I think that gives a kind of complementary understanding of what Shankar said. Yeah.
That makes sense, sir. Just one follow-up question. Uh, my question was also towards that. How should we set up that communication channel with them? Because let's say, like in the times like these, uh, for example, let's say the example of Aadhaar, like you were at a particular place, but the solution which you are trying to build is at various locations, and it is to be provided to a lot of people. You're talking about 600 million people out there. So when we say ki we should listen to them, we should ask intelligent questions, I understand that, but how should we set up that channel to ask that question to them? Like that's why what my question, like what kind of partnerships or what kind of channels which you used and which NGO can use in general, or a social enterprise can use?
I'll tell you in my case, because it was Sarkari thing, it was not easy to hire people and you didn't have funds, right? So what I did was I said, guys, this is Aadhaar. Any bright boys and girls want to work for it, I can give you a certificate, right? So I got 4 bright boys. Lots of people applied, right? And 2 of them I selected because they had roamed the entire country after graduation and before getting a job, right? And because of that and others, between them, they had contacts across the whole country. So if I wanted any feedback, I would tell 5 of them, and they would make on an average 20, 30 calls each. And by the end of the day, I've got feedback from the entire country, from at least 20 states. It is your interpretation of it. So as you're thinking about what should be the name for Aadhaar, right? It is how you set up your intelligence mechanisms, feedback mechanisms. Anybody going to the ground, I would tell them to ask, okay, go and ask these 2 questions. When we're doing the pilots, I didn't know whether there would be demand for Aadhaar or not. Right? When we're doing the pilots, I ask my team and go and check for 2 things. If there is demand, so let's say the enrollment starts at 9 a.m. Check for 2 things. One, what time did the first person come to enroll? And second, see if anybody is trying to bribe the enrollers to get ahead in line. Right? So when they went, the first person lined up a full 1 hour before. And the average bribe rate for getting ahead in the line was 50 rupees. So it's not what people tell you, but it's what you observe that gives you more confidence. Now, why would you stand in a line a full 1 hour and try to bribe the person unless you believe it's of value? Right? And then when you ask them, you realize that the value of that Aadhaar was not in an identity or something, but for the common man, and especially a lot of Indians who rely on government for subsidies, for benefits, right? It is an economic asset, right? And one person in Bihar articulated to my colleague when he asked him, why are you standing in line in the hot summer sun if you already have a voter ID card and a panchayat card? And he tells my colleague, you idiot, if I have 3 buffaloes and if the government is giving me 1 more buffalo, why will I not take it? And here we were thinking of it as India's national pride identity. For him, it's a buffalo. He's just getting 1 more. Why won't he stand in line? Right? So it's how people think of it. It's not what you think of it. It is not about India's pride and all the wonderful things that we were thinking about. Right? So be open, be humble, be smart. Don't get paralyzed by what you do not have, especially in the social enterprise. Right? If you have some clarity, it does not matter if that clarity turns out to be idiotic 1 year later. Most of my initial clarity was rather stupid in hindsight. It is that clarity that allows you to go forward, go right, come back, because you're constantly making progress, right? And unlike in what you're taught, progress is not always linear. When you're standing on the edge of a cliff, progress means taking 10 steps back, not taking 10 steps forward, right? When you're on the edge of a deep ocean, progress means stepping back and finding another path. So it is that. And never think of yourself as isolated. Who am I? I'm some poor chap sitting in Bangalore, right? It is making it work for others. Then they'll willingly help you, because in helping you, they're helping themselves.
I think Prerit, it answers you well, at least. Okay. I think that there's a time limit for, because we can go on and on. This is such a subject that you have given to us. We can go on and on with that. I think we should take it over. Thanks a lot for all the panel members for being with us. And Babar, thanks a lot. You have been listening us for this thing. We wish you very best, because you have to really achieve much more than what we have done so far. So all the best to you as well. So over to Tanishka. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thanks a lot everyone for joining. Like, it was really an insightful session, and most of this audience would have got their doubts cleared. Okay, so like we'd like to ask like each one of you, how was your experience? Just in 2 or 3 lines you would like to share. Mr. Santosh, we can start with you.
Can you please repeat what you want?
How was your experience? How you felt being with us, and how was the experience for you?
Okay. See, first thing is, I certainly I am excited to be here, and I really enjoy. I always enjoy sharing our experiences and learning and interacting with the youth. Okay, so I enjoyed this session also, and I'm happy that you have more questions. And I'm extremely sorry we could not answer all the questions this time. But what I would say is that because of this session, if it has really helped you go deep into your thoughts on what you want to do and how you want to do, then I would say that this session was really useful to all of us. Thank you. Thanks for inviting.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Shankar, sir.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for organizing this. In this era where governments are also unable to do things, given the weird world we live in, right? It might be the time for social enterprises to step forward. So the timing of this discussion is right. As we know, we cannot rely on any one branch of our society, right? Sometimes markets fail, sometimes governments fail, and sometimes people fail. But if each of us, a billion Indians, can do our own variation of social enterprise, whatever it is, then we'll be a much, much better country than we are now. So I thank you. And it was fascinating for me to listen to Baba's perspective, Santosh's perspective, and just the whole conversation we had. I'm hoping it benefited the listeners, and one of whom at least should go ahead and do something. And it benefited me because there were certain points that I heard, which I'll reflect over. But as Santosh said, it's always energizing to speak and share experiences with a bunch of youngsters. And for that, I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. Yes. Mr. Babar, how was your experience? What would you say?
So at first, thank you for this opportunity, and really it was an enriched discussion for all of us. And I wish all the success of Gopali Youth Welfare Society. So thank you again.
Thanks a lot, sir. And Bhaskar, sir, like we would like to hear your words as well. How was it for moderating?
Yes, I have been very much. I always enjoy being with you still today, and much larger today, because you have connected to such eminent panelists today. We want to be connected with you, sir, in future, because these are the young kids who wants to really take forward the social entrepreneurship per se. They are already in the path. So they are, I think, a couple of years already they are there. So they will be connected to you. Please guide them as and when you could give your times. So all the best to all of you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody, and stay safe.